So you're a beginner photographer with a little bit of experience, but you're looking to advance your skills into taking portraits. Well, let's get started. First things first is equipment. You're going to want to carefully select your equipment. You're going to hopefully be using a DSLR. Brand does not matter, Canon or Nikon are most popular. With an SD card, of course. It's going to hold a decent amount of photos. I shoot on usually 16 gigs. Then you want to choose your lens. You want a fast lens, f2.8, f1.8, f1.4. That's pretty zoomed in, at least 50 millimeters, 70 or 85 is preferable. If you need to use your kit lens, that's fine, but make sure you use it at its maximum zoom length. I do prefer primes though. And you also want a detachable flash. This is optional, but it really helps with a diffuser on the top. It really helps using an attachable flash as opposed to your built-in one. So secondly, you got to get your settings right. You got to go on your camera and make sure you're ready for the shoot prior to going on the shoot. So first things first, I like to shoot on aperture priority with the aperture as wide open as I can go. That means the lowest f-stop number. Use your ISO that you're most comfortable with on your camera. On mine, it's around 400, 300, 200. Don't want a lot of noise unless you really need to jump that ISO in a dark location. Set your white balance if you're going to be shooting in daylight. Might need to change that on location, but just keep aware. Shoot in RAW. I highly encourage shooting in RAW. It's going to help you in post-processing. When you're choosing focus mode, select the single point focus and put it right in the center so you can focus right on the eyes and then change your focus. And a one-shot focus AF operation is going to allow you to do that.
Alright, so we're on location, shooting better portraits. I'm here with Fiona, my model for the day, and we discussed earlier all the equipment we're going to be using and stuff like that. We also went through the settings, so as you're on location you should have that stuff ready to go. I'm actually shooting with a 70-200 today, but you can also shoot with a really great option, which is the 50 1.4 or 1.8. But you just want a fast lens to be able to blur out the background and get that narrow field of focus. So this is a great option. You can also use your kit lens at its maximum zoom, but I highly recommend a prime that has a fast aperture. So I picked sort of a interesting lighting location. I've got my flash on so that we're going to illuminate her face and not leave it in darkness. Hopefully we'll see some leaves in the background. That should be cool. Pushing down a little. You always have to deal with people walking through, and it's fine.
You've taken the shots, you've downloaded them to your computer, and you've got them open in your photo editor. I'm going to be using Lightroom today, but you can use any comparable software. The first thing I always do when I get in Lightroom is I pick the photos I like that I want to edit, and then I get started editing them. And the first thing I always do is click an auto tone button. This really sets up the lighting and the colors a little bit better. Honestly, it does a better job than you could ever do, so it just ends up saving you a lot of time. I usually bump up the contrast just a little bit. Might need some, might not, but don't overdo it. Second thing I always do is add a highlight tone color. I usually add a warm color because typically portraits are supposed to be friendly and more inviting, especially for a female subject, so I've done that and warmed up the highlights a little bit. Then you're going to add sharpening. That sharpens up the pixels and the edges, especially like the hair and the facial features. And while you do that, you're going to add some noise reduction. This as you add sharpening, it adds noise, and you don't like that. It doesn't look good. You also want to enable profile corrections. That prevents any lens distortion from appearing from the lens that you use. Any barreling. You can add vignetting if you'd like. And then sometimes I adjust the vibrancy, turn that down a little bit. Sometimes your camera can really crazy jump the vibrancy. You can also adjust the white balance to your liking yourself. And then the last thing I do is I always go into the face, mask the face out with a brush, and then I adjust the face. It's going to make her face look a little weird for a second, but that's just so you know where the brush is. I'm usually going to add some exposure, just a tiny bit to the face to add some emphasis. I'll also bump up the sharpening so you get the facial features nice and sharp, like the eyelashes, the teeth, the eyes. And you can also just sort of fiddle with these settings because this is the face, this is the focal point of the photo. This is what people are going to be looking at immediately. And you want to make sure that it's perfect. You might want to go in there and add some more noise reduction if there's any noise or grain in the photo from the sharpening. So you want to make sure that everything is perfect in the face and that it's emphasized, but in a subtle and appropriate way. You can toggle that on and off to see how that affected the photo. And then you're just going to want to keep looking at it, looking back and forth. You're going to zoom in, zoom out, make sure everything looks good on every level. Cropping is something you usually always going to have to do. You always want to put your subject on a line of third. You can see Fiona's right on that left third line, and that adds visual harmony to the photo. I usually also bump the blacks. It's kind of a look that's popular today. It adds a sort of a more approachable look to the photo while keeping the contrast there. So yeah, always zoom in, check the details, make sure everything looks good, make sure colors are good. I'm just realizing here now that I need a little more noise reduction because it's looking a little grainy from the sharpening, so I used on the camera. And then that's pretty much it. Keep looking at it, keep changing things, make sure it's good, and then once you're happy with your final product, you can deliver to the client.